Some of them in the energy field, there are some in the transport field, agriculture, forestry, a lot of different ones. And the F-gas regulation, which regulates SF6, is one of these puzzle pieces that together help us achieve these, or should help us achieve these goals of, in eventually 2050, the climate neutrality. So we have innovation, we have seen technological progress. We know we can reduce emissions further. We have to avoid that we put equipment into place that stays there for a long time and leaks. And of course, as a not unimportant side point, also we want to promote the green technologies that can help us do all this. So where are we with this new law? We reached a political agreement on a new F-gas regulation just about a month ago. And this needs to be officially signed off by the European Parliament and by the Council being the 27 EU member states. And we hope that this law can start then already in April 2024 with the new rules on SF6. So what are these new rules? On one hand, of course, you want to avoid that equipment that is in place that it leaks, and we call that the so-called containment measures. On the other hand, you can regulate new equipment, avoiding that you put new equipment in place to add to it. So on this slide, this is a bit about keeping the SF6 inside the equipment. And some of these rules we have had, but we have now strengthened them and expanded them. So when it comes to emission prevention, it is completely prohibited, of course, to intentionally release. And you also have to take all measures feasible to avoid during use any emissions. And that can, of course, also include things such as recapturing gases that may have leaked. What is also a little bit new is that we also cover beyond the use phase, also production, storage, transport, and transfer of gases. So when the SF6 equipment is made, when the gas is transported to the manufacturer, etc., that is also covered. And any leaks should be repaired without undue delay. There are also leak checks in place, even though a lot of the SF6 equipment, given that they have leakage detection system in place and they're hermetically sealed, they're exempted from these leak checks. There is a requirement that technicians are trained and certified. Records must be kept, and of course, at the end of the life, there is an obligation to recover the gas and avoid leakage. So coming to avoiding the use of SF6 in new equipment, and this is one of the big novelties in this sector. We have new prohibitions in place that covers the whole, and I mentioned it previously, there is a lot of different SF6 equipment. It covers the whole voltage levels from small, medium voltage up to very high voltage. You see here in the left in this table, up to, you know, above 145, that would be the very high voltage sector. And we have, for all these sectors, we have different starting dates on the right side, and that depends a little bit how mature the alternative availability in this sector is. And you see that for medium voltage up to 52 kilowatts, actually F-gases are prohibited to be used in new switchgear. From 52 kilowatts onwards, it's up to a GWP of 1, so very, very low. There's one essentially synthetic alternatives that can be used there. That is the principal rule. However, given that you know, there is a lot of specialty applications, niche applications, where it may not be possible today to use an alternative, there are certain derogations that allow you to use an alternative with a higher GWP if you can prove that you cannot use an alternative in this place, and that proof is done by a tendering process. So the principal rule is avoid F-gases altogether in medium voltage. In higher voltage, use up to a gas up to a GWP of 1, and if that is not feasible, then you can go higher. And in some cases, you might even be able to use SF6 if you can prove it, if you can document it. Then that if it's for the site-specific use, that's no other possibility, you can still use that. But we expect that the majority of equipment, even initially, will be able to avoid SF6 altogether. So, as I said, these rules with the caveats, with the derogations that allow us to put into place prohibitions from a relatively early start date. So in this period of 2026 to 2032, we're basically eliminating SF6 and even other F gases to a degree. So it's a very strong technology push, and we hope that this technology push will then also help us develop alternatives in those specialty applications where we may not have it today, where we still need this derogation. So because we have this rule in place, we expect actually this to be going forward very quickly, because the manufacturers have a very good incentive to develop such equipment, even for equipment that may not be produced in very high numbers. And the principle of these rules is that you must use the most environmentally benign alternative wherever this is possible. And when it's not possible, we have, as I said, this incentive to develop such solutions so that it will be possible in the near future. What I also wanted to mention, there is of course a lot of SF6 already in place in switchgear on the ground, since we've been using this equipment for many, many decades. And there is a new rule then from 2035 that you cannot use virgin SF6, virgin being newly produced SF6, in such appliances to top up, basically because they leak over time. You may have to refill, and that refilling is not going to be allowed from 2035 onwards if you use newly produced gas. You can use reclaimed gas, and that's the beauty of this rule, if you want, that there is a very big incentive to avoid emissions during the lifetime and at the end of life, especially. So to prevent any illegal venting by giving this reclaimed, or the gas that is recovered and reclaimed, a very a value, because it can be used to keep existing equipment running. So that is then a big incentive also to avoid end-of-life emissions, which, even though it's prohibited in the real world, of course, do occur. So those are, in a nutshell, the new rules, and we will be reviewing them in 2030 and see how well they have worked. So maybe a few words also. This is, of course, just EU specific, these legislative approaches we have taken, but we think that these rules will also have an impact beyond the EU border, and not only in the EU neighborhood, of course, where people that are, for instance, in accession talks, they try to align with our policies, but even beyond, because this policy push will make SF6 free equipment available in much higher numbers. We have it now in the medium voltages, especially in to cover many applications, but still this need to produce this equipment, because it needs to be installed in many instances in the next years, will produce them in very high numbers, which is then also producing, of course, economies of scale, and the cost of equipment goes down. And this availability and cost will then also, of course, help the accessibility of such equipment in other markets beyond the EU, because the manufacturers have, the production capacities to produce equipment in high numbers, and easily can also satisfy other demands then. So in the end, we think that from this regulation, everyone will benefit. We see already, I was just 2 weeks ago at a conference where manufacturers and others in the electricity field were present, and it was confirmed that already we see a huge ramp up of alternative equipment in the EU. We also see it in other markets. In California, for instance, the policymakers have done some groundwork even before us on prohibiting SF6 in switchgear. We see in China alternative equipment being installed. So there is a lot of these activities going on all over the globe. So we really hope that with our reinforced F-gas regulation, we can be a trigger for multiplication of action in this field elsewhere. And of course, we're very happy as policymakers to liaise with other countries to share our experiences with this policy approach. And we hope that taking action in SF6 will also maybe be more on the radar screen of countries, that this is a very good way to add to your NDC to be able to reduce emissions from maybe a sector that has so far not received that much attention. So as a last maybe proposal from my side is that in our view we should try to work together, and that's also why on our side we have been supporting the CTCN with money. Even recently, you see some figures on the screen from the European Commission side. My employer, we have provided in two different projects 5 million since Sharm el-Sheikh to the CTCN. And we hope through this technology mechanism of UNCTCN, we can in this field maybe also make some progress. This is on the funding side. We have provided money, but of course, the which projects in the end will be funded is a bit up to developing countries and others to make their request. So from our side, it would be a call that if you're convinced that this is a good area to do something, that under this heading of decarbonizing your grids, you would also look at the switchgear and the possibility to avoid SF6 use as a way of reducing emissions in developing countries and middle income countries all over the world. And funding would be available from CTCN and probably also from other funds to do this. So that would be our hope, that this would stimulate action elsewhere. So to sum up very shortly from our side, from my side, we think there is a good reason for optimism here, because as I've tried to show in that one slide, we do have a lot of alternative equipment being developed by many different manufacturers. And we do have the innovative industry that can help us do the switch in this sector and avoid SF6. And given that also the challenges of having to renew our grids, having to expand our grids with the renewables and heat pump use and others, it would be really inexcusable. We have the alternatives, and we would just continue as usual with SF6, putting a highly warming super greenhouse gas, as they call it, into place. That would really be a shame, and in view of fighting climate change, would really not be the way forward. From our side, we feel that policy has an important role to play, because there is, of course, a little bit still a little bit price tag on the alternative equipment. And so that's why we are pushing with strong rules on the regulatory side. But as I tried to say, of course, this regulatory push will help the economies of scale and will hopefully also bring down any upfront costs that are still at the moment the case. We see that there's a growing interest worldwide, and hopefully with this event we can stimulate this interest further and convince others that there's some good opportunities available here to move forward. And yes, we see the CTCN as one actor that can help countries do that. And yes, why not put it in your next NDC, your next version of your NDC? So that would be it from my side. Thank you very much for listening to me, and back to the organizers.
Thank you, Arno, for a very comprehensive presentation, citing the various F-gases rules which are about to come, the benefits of replacing SF6, and the kind of actions or activities what we can do in the future. Uh, but please remain online in case there are any questions at the end of the session. We'll come back to you. So please be online. Uh, our next speaker, I would like to invite DTRAM and to again tell us about what we can do, what is the importance of phasing out SF6 and how we can do about it. And I would, in the interest of time, I would request DTRAM to be very short so that we can straight away jump into the panel discussions after his intervention.
Yeah, many thanks, Rajiv. Many thanks, Arno. I will be very brief and to just focus on some key action points. I have some slides. Maybe in the meantime you can put that up. But we have a great panel here, so I would like keep enough time for the panel. My name is Dieter Oppelt. I'm from the NDE Germany. This is under the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. So we are part of the CTCN family as an NDE. The CTCN, the N stands for NDEs. So we are part of 160 NDEs, and we are from in developed country NDE. And what we like to promote under the technology mission. So the core of the technology mechanism is really to make a transformative case. And we want to go really to leapfrog to zero emission technologies. And I think this case here with the alternative with SF6-free switch gears, we have a perfect case where we can come from a very high emission point of view to zero emissions. So this is a perfect case. And this is something we like to promote through the ND, through the CTCN, together with manufacturers and together with partners. And this is a key point. So the second point is basically, as I just want to give a little bit the global perspective. So Arno has very much pointed out what is happening in the EU. So we have a perfect case here where we have now in EU regulation, we have available technologies, and we have really the potential to go to zero emissions for at least new equipment. And I don't know if you can put up my slides, but I have a slide basically. So the first point is we have massively rising global emissions of SF6, so it's continuously growing. And this is, as Arno and also Rajiv has pointed out, because of the rise of renewable energies. So basically, so can you go to the next slide? So basically, there is a risk that we double current emissions. So current emissions are around 200 million tons of CO2. But let's say the bigger risk is that we have done some calculations, and the estimated risk of the SF6, which is stored in the banks globally, is about maybe over 4 times of the emissions of Germany. So it's very significant. It could be more than 3 gigatons. There are no exact figures, but since the equipment has a lifetime of 40 years, basically, and has started to build in 1960, the risk is that we are releasing this this massive amount of SF6, which is an equipment. And Rajiv knows that in developing countries, basically, if you're not paid for taking care of end-of-life emissions, it will just be released in the atmosphere. So then if you can go to the next slide. So. Yeah, so I think you can go to the next one, skip that because of time. I think this is important, basically. Now, the US was actually first. California was banning SF6 as a first state in the US, and then New York is about to follow. Then we have the European F-gas regulation now with a ban coming from 2026 to 2032. And there are other restrictions in other countries, but basically in developing countries where most of the future emissions will happen, basically there is no regulation. So the next slide. Yeah, so I think the good thing is we have now new technologies. So the important thing is basically 2 things: to ban SF6 for new equipment, and the second step is to control the leakage of emissions of existing equipment. So next slide. Yeah, so basically, what are the action points? So the action points are, I think one slide was missing, no? The one before is on the policy side. I think we need to address the policies. So we have the policy instruments as in Europe, and we have it in California. The other one is we need to have inventories. So we had a workshop in Berlin with 16 developing countries, which was supported by CDCN and the German ministry. And it was clear that the awareness in developing countries for the problem is not there. But we convinced, basically, there was, for example, Kenya present, where we had a follow-up workshop then in Nairobi. And basically, it's very good that we can move forward with Kenya on that. So the next point is about the financing. So at the moment, as Arno has said, with more of the new equipment coming into place, basically, we will reduce the upfront costs. So it will become more and more economically to the point where basically the new equipment is, and I think Siemens can tell us more about this, is not any more expensive than the current equipment. And also, especially if we look at the use phase, the maintenance is actually cheaper for the new equipment than the old equipment, because we don't have the environmental problems and the leakage controls. The issue is not there anymore. And then, of course, I mean, supportive financing to make the shift is important. So climate finance can also be an important trigger to make the move. Okay, next step. Next slide. Yeah, so I think just what are the key action points? I think the first action point is basically on the national basis, we need inventories, we need integration into NDCs and climate action plans, into low emission development strategies. Then the next slide is basically, and that's what we hope we start with to do with Kenya, and we'll hear more from the colleague from Kenya, and then to build that maybe in Africa, a first regional case, yeah? And to have learnings from starting one country to other countries. And then basically, ideally, we hope we can go from there to a global phase out of SF6. So that would be our vision. So that's next slide. And yeah, and Joe, and if you can go to the next slide. So the yeah, and this is my last slide. I'd just like to thank very much for all basically who has supported us so far. I mean, first of all, there was our ministry who gave great support, and then also CTCN, and it was really very encouraging. And then we have also we're working together with GIZ in Germany, basically to also bring it on this global scale. And then we have we had at the African Climate Week a very great session with 40 NDEs and the CDCN, and also great meetings with Kenya. And many thanks for Kenya for your support and engaging on this topic, which is, I think, very encouraging and can be a role model for many other countries. And then thanks to also many of the manufacturers who supported us on the journey. So I hope we can continue the journey and end in a global phase out of SF6. Thank you. Very briefly, Mark will give some slides on the technology.
Yeah, next slide. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm really happy to exchange with you. And now many things have been said, so I can be short. I will talk a little bit about the technology. I'm Mark Kuschel from Siemens Energy, based in Berlin in a switchgear factory, more than 100 years. So we have 50 years of oil breakers, 50 years of SF6, and now actually the second time a big innovation started, and this is the clean part, and I'm really glad to talk about this. So next slide. Yeah, next slide. Basically, what are our targets? If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so what is about clean air instead of SF6? Basically, technically speaking, it's just pure air, so it's N2 and O2 in the direction like we have it in the atmosphere, so 80% of nitrogen and 20% of oxygen. And the good thing is that, of course, it is not just, from environmental point of view, low emissions, because it's just zero, the GWP is zero, but of course there are also many other advantages. Like, for example, you can release air into the atmosphere. There's no need to recovery, to refilling and everything, which helps at the end of the day. It is totally safe. Of course, you can breathe it in. You can inhale it. There's no risk. There's also no decomposition products with it, no toxicity. And this is, at the end of the day, also a part to improve the health of the employees if any risk can happen. Next slide. Yeah, so this slide Arno Kaschel showed already. So I'm representing one of the manufacturers, but there are also many others joining this journey, which we are proud of this. We started our journey as Siemens Energy 2008 actually. The first products were introduced in 2010 already. So the technology is proven because of course the grids needs to be reliable, no doubt about this. We need to avoid blackouts, so therefore it needs to be very sure that the technology what we introduce is very safe, and this is really the case at the moment because there's many experiences available, and the technology is really proven that it works reliable in the grid. Next slide, please. Yeah, and here we go. So just from our company, we have more than 600 units already successfully in operation. More than 7,000 are already contracted. So there's really a start-up of growing of these orders in Central Europe, North Europe. Nobody order anymore SF6, and this is good. We need a transition to make it, of course. At the moment, we have to handle two portfolio, SF6 portfolio and the clean air portfolio. This is, of course, also complexity. We need to reduce it. And we as Siemens Energy are committed right now to become net zero in 2030. That means we are aiming also to stop SF6 production in 2030. So therefore, we need now a phase 2 towards SF6 free equipment. Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, here we go. Around 60% of our portfolio are already transferred and are available without SF6. There's still some products to be covered for the world basis. For Europe, we are ending at 420 kilovolts, but there are other countries having also 550 kilovolts in place. So we will be ready in 2030. This is our goal and our ambition. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so it has been said already, clean air is the future. SF6 has no future anymore. Clean air stands for lowest environmental impact, best health and safety, and best technical performance, actually. It reduces the cost, the life cycle cost. The gas handling is much more easier, for example. And finally, we have the right competence to make this technology transition also possible, and we are really looking forward to inspire and to of course to have more manufacturers joining this journey for a better world and for a greener future. Thank you very much for your attention.
So let's immediately jump into the panel discussion, and I would like to invite the panel members to come and take their seat. I would like to invite Mr. Stephen Wenzel, who currently acts as the Parliamentary State Secretary at the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Welcome, sir. He is a member of the German Bundestag since 2021, and having been a member of the State Parliament of Lower Saxony between 1998 and 2021. Previously, he has held several high-ranking positions in the State Parliament, including as a Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action, as well as the Chair of the Budget and the Finance Committee. Mr. Wenzel has studied in agriculture economics from Göttingen University. Welcome, sir, again. I would also like to invite Engineer Isaac Kiwa, Secretary of Renewable Energy, Kenyan Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. Engineer Kiwa is the head of the Renewable Energy Directorate in the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, Kenya, which is also the directorate responsible for climate change affairs in the ministry. Engineer Kiwa has a wealth of experience in renewable energy and has been instrumental in the design and implementation of policies that have seen Kenya have one of the greenest grid in the world. I would again like to invite Dr. Mark Kushal, who is the head of international standardization for grid technologies at Siemens Energy. He holds a PhD in the field of electrical and high voltage engineering. He is active in standardization work, including he is the vice chair of installation coordination of IEC TC99, Secretary Switchgear Committee IEC SC17C, etc. Welcome to all the three panel members, and what I'm trying to do is I'm going to ask you different questions, starting with a question to Mr. Wenzel. Mr. Wenzel, Germany is a promoter of an F-gas phase out in the EU and also globally. There are many German companies which are leading transition to F-gas free technologies. The participants would like to know how could Germany collaborate with other countries and international organizations to promote a coordinated global effort for SF6 phase out.
Now it's better? Yeah. If I put it on, it's functioning better. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel, and it's a great honor to speak to this item, because it's a very important one, and we see, as we saw at on the table behind us, how much we have to do and how much we can do if we see the new technology opportunities we have. So it's a point we must address, and we must address it internationally, I think. And for Germany, we are very much interested to go on with this in the European Union, and to bring this a new law in power, and hopefully we can achieve that in April of 24. But second point is we talked about at the G7 countries together how we can push it in the future time. And we also think it might be a good point for the Article 10 of the Paris Agreement, the technology mechanism, so that we can use it also to come ahead here in the framework of the Paris Agreement. And we have the technology, we saw the opportunities of new company, so we have the opportunity to go ahead. And we have a big challenge, because if we're switching from old coal power plants and other big power plants to renewables, we need also a lot of more grids worldwide. Sometimes we can use off-grid solutions, even in Africa. It might be in some rural areas also a good solution to need to use off-grid solutions. In other regions, we will have to build new grids to bring countries together, to bring regions together, to connect towns, and new opportunities to produce electricity with wind or with solar panels. And we saw in the last years how fast it's going ahead, and so the grids must follow. But I hope, hopefully, we can build grids without SF6. And now we have the technology, and we must have the mechanism to bring this SF6 free technology on the ground. And we are very interested, because this is a very, very strong gas which is heating our atmosphere a lot more than much others.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wenzel. Means you have very clearly pointed out means the importance of doing it, how we can do it using the technology mechanism and under the climate convention, Um and therefore leading to this question, this answer, I would like to now ask a question from to engineer Isaac Kiva. Uh, you have heard and seen in the presentation the new European regulation and the evolving technology landscape. What is Kenya's perspective as a developing country on this particular technology or this particular F gas SF6? Does it align with the existing energy policies in Kenya on decarbonization, Um or do you see something contradictory what SF6 can do, and you have to change even your energy policy to meet the requirements of a phase out of SF6?
Thank you, moderator, and thank you also for the partners who have put this panel together. This is a topic which is very exciting to us. As you know, our grid is 92% renewable. We talk of that because it is carrying renewable power. It's carrying geothermal, it's carrying solar, it's carrying wind and biomass, bioenergy. But then beyond what it is carrying, then the infrastructure ought to also be green. And therefore, the issue about what is the structure of the switchgear, which is supporting this transportation, then becomes of importance to us. And as you know, Kenya has said that we are going to more than before enhance our generation capabilities. Right now we are 3 gigawatts. Our president did say that yesterday in several forums. By 2040 we intend to go to maybe about 35. But the biggest leap is going to come between 2040 and 2050, fueled by e-mobility, e-cooking, green industrialization, where we need to reach 100 gigawatts. And in terms of doing the transmission and distribution will require a lot. So even the new infrastructure is going to be quite a lot, and also phasing out the old infrastructure, modernizing it, and looking at how to strengthen the grid which is already there. So for us, therefore, this matches with our goals of getting to net zero by 2050. During the Africa Climate Summit, we launched our low emission strategy going to 2050. Currently, we have worked on the energy transition and investment plan, which is looking at how we are going to then reach there. So the new investments, the new undertakings we are going to do, we want to do them in an climate environmental way. And so we'll be following up to see how we can quickly look at our system and look at how to move forward with some pilots, and through Kenya also be able to reach the other Eastern African countries, because we have the Eastern African power pool where we can be able to work together. So because of time, I will reach it there, but we are very much interested and we'll be working together with other partners. Fortunately, in Kenya, we work with EU, work with Germany, GIZ, we work with the UN, and so this gives us an opportunity to marshal our efforts together and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Engineer Kiva, and this is very heartening to know. And we as CTCN are always there to support you. We have been UNEP is based in headquartered in Kenya. Our team is there, and we would look forward to work with you. I do understand that there are some initial steps which have started happening, and we look forward that it would be more operationalized in the few months to come, and we are going to report positively on this project. My last question to Mark, and Mark, please be please be a bit short, is because we only have 4 minutes now. Siemens Energy is leading provider of SF6 free high voltage switch gears. You are one of the early developers of this technology, and you are also a keen supporter of the EU regulation on the phase out. What does it take to have this technology transferred to, to, to a developing country? How do you think, do you think as of now, is it technically and commercially viable? How much time will it take to become more commercially viable in the future? What's your assessment as a private sector company?
Yeah, I think I can make it very short. So in Europe, also the road blocker was in the beginning new technology to be established. Is this really safe? Is this reliable? Where I get all the equipment, let's say the accessory equipment like gas handling devices and etc. So that was basically the road blocker in the beginning. Also a road blocker was what will be at the end of the day the regulation, how it would look like, what will be allowed, what will be not allowed, what technology will be, let's say, recognized as sustainable. We had discussions on EU taxonomy, where GWP 10 is right now established. So all this kind of discussions were taken and were something like a road blocker for the grid operators to decide what they will buy at the end of the day. But the good thing is we are through this process in Europe. For example, just as Siemens Energy, we invested to develop the technology and the products, three-digit number of million of euros. Of course, it takes time. We are there right now. Products are available, as you could recognize. They are available worldwide. Of course, we are a global company. Arno Kaschel mentioned that, for example, in China, we have more than 160 orders already in China. It's a very good progress. So I think for developing countries, the products are there. They can see the experiences we have made in other parts of the world. Now we can go forward.
Great. Thank you. A last word from Mr. Wenzel.
Because you mentioned the regulation, it shows how important it sometimes is if you have an innovative project to have also an innovative regulation to bring it in power. And we want to support the CTCN here with our German national designed entity to use the opportunities of the Article 10 technology mechanism to go ahead and to find a lot of countries who do this with us together. So thank you very much for this discussion.
Means I think our time is up. So I would just like to thank our panelists for a very good discussion. I would like to thank Arno for a beautiful presentation, to DTRAM and to Siemens Energy who made their interventions short, focused. We as CTCN, as technology mechanisms, we are looking at this as a huge opportunity. Now the onus is on the country. We are going to keep on raising this awareness with the countries at every forum and every chance we get. And we are ready to partner the countries, the NDEs, to take the next steps on this important goal, which we are setting ourselves. And we hope that by the next few months, we are going to get a kind of a critical mass which can really start driving the program and launching the program in a big way. Starting with Kenya, so thank you very much again. I would say for the CTCN, Kenya is like a guinea pig. We always do the first experiment with you, but that also provides us with... Yes, and you show the path to the rest of the countries, at least in Africa, on how to go about it. So thank you again. And I therefore close this session in the panel discussion. Thank you very much.